Hello, everybody. This is super exciting to have this guy with me live here in the Spark family living room virtually. What a gift to have Mark Salinas in the house and to actually be in the National Equity Project house for this moment. This is a really special time and a special human being. So let me tell you all about Mark Salinas for just a second, and then we're going to dig right into the questions. And before I tell you about Mark and how awesome he is, I'm just going to remind you all, this all started with one index card that created this card game. So many people in here have been here since the beginning who were like, I believe in community, I believe in collaboration, I want more inclusive activities to engage, break bread, build bridges, and you all are here because you're committed. You're committed to courageous leadership, you're committed to communities that are inclusive beyond the buzz phrase, like really having hard conversations about what does it mean to make sure everybody has a voice at a table. And I have to say, like, I would not be who I am if it wasn't for this guy. And I don't say that lightly. This is really special for me to kind of get to have a conversation with my very first coach, my very first like equity leadership teacher. Mark is a very, very special human being, and y'all will see in a second why. But let me just tell you, Mark has like over 20 years of experience in education. Yeah, you've been at National Equity Project for over 15 years. 16 years at this amazing organization. He's so deeply committed to serving schools and school leaders and students to make sure that every child, regardless of their background, regardless of the zip code they live in, regardless of their race, receives a high quality education. I have so much gratitude in my heart for all the lessons I've learned from you. I truly wouldn't be the leader I am today if it wasn't for all the support and all the just like thought partnership, coaching, holding up the mirror with like grace and thoughtfulness and intentionality. And I learned the word intentionality from this guy. Like I can't even begin to make a list of all the reasons why I think you're a phenomenal human being and how grateful I am that you're here on this Spark interview series. So thank you. Thank you for being here.
I'm glad to be here. And that was a lot to hear. Wow. Because we haven't hung in a minute. So I am humbled to be here and really want to just reflect out loud with y'all around some of these topics. Yeah. And I'm just so proud of this. I saw, idea turn into something. And then here we are, flash forward. I'm sitting here reflecting out loud, being invited into a space with hundreds of you all who have been connecting around the ideas behind things like this. And so I have to also say I'm just deeply appreciative of a lot of the shoulders that I stand on of folks, my parents who are no longer here, because when talking about leadership and courage and integrity, that's where I learned it all. And also big shout out to a lot of folks I ran the streets with at San Francisco State University when I really learned how to come into my why and some purpose and social justice issues. Had a little bit of that in high school, but that place was a good training ground for me to get clear around, what I wanted to step up to and step around and this, that, and what have you. So I want to at least start with some deep appreciation for my parents, for that town where I was born and raised, and particularly that university and the ethnic studies program, like many of the professors and really just folks on the streets, meaning that in the middle of the plaza, we call that the streets. That's where a lot of the ideas were exchanged in front of the student center. Yeah. So with that, I'm just humbled, excited to be here. I'm going to reflect out loud. I might stand up or something. Sitting in a chair for a while might not always suit myself, but we're in the living room. So if I just move like I'm in the living room, that's just how I flow.
Exactly, yeah. And this is really like part of the whole series is courageous leadership. Part of it is stepping up and not having like a polished, prepared plan. We're here having a real-time conversation, thinking out loud. So intentionally, I ask the same 3 questions every time, but they look and sound different given who the person is. And that's the power of this series, right? And so, this is it's basically you and me having a conversation. And it's not like ever intended to be the be all end all. It's today on April 12th, some thoughts and reflections. So thank you for that. And it's a powerful thing to do the work that you do and that you've done in this work in a lot navigating a lot of dynamics, right? So in the skin that you're in the experience that you're in, given the life that you live, what does courageous leadership mean to you and all that you navigate and all of what that means for you today in this moment? Because it may change.
Yeah, and it has been changing in the last couple of years and the last few months, and it will continue to. But there are a few things that I think don't change, that some stances that I tend to try and live by, not just in my day job, but just in general. And I say try to, because I'm a work in progress. But a couple critical factors for me is really being grounded in what you're up to and what contribution you're trying to make to humanity, and I would even say to all living things. Actually, seeing the Dalai Lama, Shoreline Amphitheater, maybe, 20 or so years ago. I read some of his stuff, seen some videos, but sitting with 20,000 people, and you can hear like a pin drop, listening to him talk about compassion and respect and love for all living beings, is it still true to this day that I carry a lot of that in terms of how I want to think about my contributions to all living things. Humanity, in terms of, I say that a lot, that's kind of a jargon word, but it really is about all living things. So one is like, what am I up to? What's my why? I believe in being fully present in the moment. And I think that is, which makes me late for a lot of things. Yeah, I had to flip my watch a little bit sideways here, because I can be in this, and next thing you know, like if you wouldn't stop this in an hour, it'd be like 8 o'clock. Because I feel like being present is bold, and it's what's necessary. Because people got stories and they got experiences, and so courage is about being present, knowing what you're up to. I would say listening and believing people is something that is increasingly becoming so more true to me. I think it was always in me, but especially the believing piece now even more. And that's courageous, because if you really truly listen to someone and you believe them, you may have to change how you feel about something or what you were thinking about that person. So it takes courage to listen well, because you can listen for what you want to hear. You can listen and have the kind of like Velcro Scotch guard, meaning that I'll just let some stuff roll off, with a little Scotch guard, and maybe just grab some stuff that sticks on the Velcro. But if you're really truly listening and I guess believing, folks, there is no Velcro or Scotch guard. It's not about sticking. It kind of really infuses in you. So it's not just kind of out there, the stories and what you hear, but it actually starts to get inside of who you are. And then it takes courage, because you can't act like you didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Right? You can't act like you didn't hear that from somebody. You can try and discount it. You can say, I don't believe that. But yeah, I'll just stop right there on that piece. So that's core to me in terms of being courageous, because of what it might mean for you.
Yeah.
The other is other couple things that come to mind is integrity, and so which is probably the biggest, highest kind of relational trust attribute that's on my list. That's around courage. Is because it really, in my view, it forces you to act, have some agency, and take responsibility for stuff. And if you really put out there that you have integrity, it really holds you to leap out and try some stuff. And so, if I say I'm going to do something and I kind of do it, but I don't do it well, there's nothing wrong with a mistake there, but I actually did it, and then I can learn from that. Yeah. Right? And so for me, integrity doesn't mean you get everything right. It doesn't mean that all your follow-ups are done correctly. Like if you did something malicious and bad, that's with no integrity. But if you did the best version of you, you did the best that you could, and you followed through, and your word is gold, meaning that you say you're going to do something, and then folks are like, it's on. Yeah. To me, it takes courage to do that. It's just put some stakes in the ground about things like what really matters to you. So integrity. So like in terms of, at times I actually do feel like I do look out and look for like ways in which people are showing integrity, and that matters to me. But more importantly, I always ask myself, how am I exhibiting and modeling integrity more than how I'm valuing and judging and viewing other people, that if I could just put that out and model it in terms of my best version of what integrity means to me, and respect and understand that integrity might mean something different to somebody else, and to not judge them around my views of that. So again, I think in that whole piece around, I guess, courage is a way in which you're always looking in the mirror and keeping yourself honest, in many ways around what you espouse out there around, I want to see integrity. I want to see this in the world that I'm populating. And then last, I would say, I think it's just a deep sense of normalizing fear, discomfort, emotions, and all that kind of stuff. It's not trying to, I'm still grappling with this, but I'm even trying to get away from language like managing emotions or managing discomfort and managing fear, and more kind of normalizing it and not really kind of managing, like I guess an assumption is that is as if you're in control of it. So instead of like being in control, these things have a flow. I'm trying to find language that's like, just go through the emotion or go through the fear. Don't try and like face the fear and then get like, I'm gonna manage you and I'm gonna get in there and fight you fear or overcome the fear. But actually it is fear, and it's an emotion that was given to us. And so in there, it's sending me a message. It's sending me a signal. And so what's the message in there? That fear may be not a bad thing, but it's fear that's like something's taking care of you to where you should be thinking about something a little bit more so you can fully be into something. So it's not fear as a bad thing, but maybe fear as a normal emotion of response, how to embrace those things and figure out how to work through them. And so I guess the last piece around courage is when I feel when I'm at my best around courage is when I'm not trying to manage things, but I'm trying to get it flow with things. When I'm trying to normalize and say, this is what needs to be. And then what's the message in that I'm trying to take away, or I should be thinking about, or insight that I should actually have in order to stay in flow. Not to just get over this, but to stay in flow with what I'm up to, if that makes any sense.
It does. It makes a lot of sense. There was so much goodness in there. I mean, yes. And I think it gets hard sometimes. And when we're in the work, when we do equity work, when we're coaching or supporting people across difference, across gender, across race, across generation, across what have you, our courage can be tested. And we can feel like it'd be easier to be comfortable right now, so I'm actually going to walk away. Or it would be easier to do X, Y, or Z, and I'm actually going to choose to make a different call because it gets hard. So how do you do it, Mark? Like, you are here we were. When did we meet? We met in 2011, almost 7 years ago. Yeah. So here we go. I'm fresh right out of getting my administrative credential, and I'm like, I'm about to be an administrator. Oh my gosh, we have a coach in my school. What? This is a blessing. What's your name? We just met, and here is this. You struck me with how facile you were at code switching with every person, and like meeting people where they were at. And then supporting them at their level and allowing them really, really embodying what's on the wall in this group, daring to be brave and elevating others with integrity. Like you did when you say, I work on modeling integrity versus pointing fingers at people who are showing or not showing it. Like you did that. You do that. You modeled it for me, and therefore created like the power of presence, right? Like you showed me that even though no one else around me was acting the way you were, you showed me it doesn't matter. Like you still do it. You show up no matter what, even when it gets hard, especially when it gets hard. So when does it get hard for you? And if you have a story or if you just want to share, why, how do you keep at it?
Well, not doing it alone. So that's why I'm, been here 16 years, and I don't think I could be doing the work that I'm doing right now if I didn't have a support network. Now, it didn't have to be necessarily an organization. I still could be doing this, but I would have to have some folks with me so that I can have some moments of normalizing, reflecting, venting, getting through some stuff, being pushed. So one is I feel a sense of I need a social network normalize and to see other folks going through it. Just like in my head, I know other folks are challenged, other folks are going through stuff, but I need to actually be with some folks grappling with that stuff myself.
Mm-hmm.
So this organization currently does that for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I get tested, and it's hard like almost every day.
Yeah.
And the hardest is when I'm around schools and young people. And that's not all the work we do and I do,
Mm-hmm.
but that's probably the hardest because I got into this work from the classroom and working with young folks and kids. And so if I'm around stuff that I actually see some nonsense, or just nonsense meaning that's just a manifestation, it's not like people are out trying. Let me go back to a belief that I have too.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of stuff that
Mm-hmm.
I think I see and I witness and I observe
Mm-hmm.
that actually drives me crazy, that leads me to places of judgment, whatever. I have to pause and say, most of all of what I'm seeing, I know nobody's sitting back planning for that to happen. Like if I see a classroom that looks completely off the chain, off the hook, I know that teacher's not up late the night before planning. Okay, I want to make sure that 3 staples get thrown. I want to make sure I throw out 5 kids. They're not planning for that. Right? So I can't charge that to who they are in terms of what some of the interactions of certain things. Now I can still have a bunch of stuff that bubbles up in me. I'm like, but I'm seeing something that doesn't look okay, but I can't go to a place of then zeroing in and say, how could you allow that to actually happen? Because I would bet, and I now have testimony experience, that anyone that I kind of get into a relationship, they don't want to see that happening in their classroom either. Or if I'm more a leader over here, there's certain things going on in their organization or in their cabinet, they don't want those things that, that some would say are, toxic or egregious, or like those things that's like, hey, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like nobody wants that.
Right.
Not even the folks that are participating in it, I would say in my experience.
Right.
So partly it's to breathe and pause and actually say, I'm seeing manifestations of some stuff. I'm seeing, it's a metaphor. I learned a lot of that from you, from like in our partnership of like, we talk and you have a visual. We talk and you have a metaphor, an analogy, whatever. So I've been growing a lot of my ability to kind of do that. So it actually helps me make sense and meaning of something, to where I'm seeing some manifestations of some stuff, or some, here's some things that I'm trying to, again, some signals that are coming to me, and I'm trying to understand what's the root cause there. So that stops me from getting into like, this is out of control problem or challenge, to like, yeah, it's a problem. Yeah, it's a challenge. And yeah, I'm a little frustrated. I'm a little this, but actually there's more information I need to gather. There's more information I need to get versus just kind of like, oh, how the hell am I going to do that? My first reaction might be, how the hell am I going to get in there and help that? And can I even help that? So I step back and say, wow, that's a fire. Yeah. But then when I think of other folks in professions that work from crisis management, nobody looks at someone who's come in, a gunshot victim, come into the ER and say, dang, you got 3 bullets in you. No, they just go right in and say, okay, look at these, right? They're not sitting there, right?
That's
now,
so true.
So inside, I'm sure there's distress, and like that stuff eats away, but nobody's looking at like, I don't know if I can like patch that up. You just like, right? So sometimes the metaphors of looking even at some other professions and how those professionals, and again, a lot of work to actually manage that distress or whatever. It's not that they just go right in and cognitively work in those environments. It's not distressful, and I'm sure they got opinions and around all kinds of stuff they see. Yeah. But they know their role in that moment.
Right.
And so, and we draw on some work from some authors and some research connected to helping professions that has also helped me stay in this work, to where when I'm feeling like I'm in that moment, I have to step into being that professional. What's needed in this moment, no matter what, no matter who caused or who did what. Okay, this is what we're currently working with, and it's still a challenge, but I still have to figure out in there, there's a way. Yeah. In there, there's this solution, or at least a next step. There's a pause that can actually happen, and I'm increasingly getting more better and more humble at of being okay with pausing stuff and breathing and not knowing what to do next. So that takes courage to actually pause with folks, and then folks are like, "Well, you've been doing this for 20 years, so what do I do next?" And to be able to say, I don't know what we should do next, but what we did is we paused for a minute, we're breathing. Now we're smiling together for a second of like, this is crazy, and we're laughing about it. We may not know what we're going to do next, but it takes courage to say, I don't know what we're going to do next. But for right now, where are we at? Let's maybe let some of that cortisol slip away in our brain because it's gotten hijacked and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
As you connect, neuroscience and stuff. So
yeah.
sometimes it is about being humble enough to not know what to do, and humble enough to actually pause and actually, you more often than not, allow people themselves to start to think about their next move, what's going on for them, having them describe a little bit of the quote unquote, challenge that they're in.
Yeah.
And sometimes people talk their way out of how challenging it is to it's barely, it's a little bit challenging, but here's part of it that I feel like I'm okay with. So I feel like I draw a lot on some coaching stuff that I've learned and practiced over time, but a lot of it does have to be about being humble, not faking the funk, acting like and you should have an answer all the time, and being able to sit in some ambiguity for a while and normalizing that ambiguity and not knowing isn't necessarily going to make a challenge worse.
Right.
Now, if it goes on and you still don't start working toward that, but how to reframe working towards something may not be solving it, but it could be around, if I'm trying to better understand it, that may help minimize my anxiety around the challenge if I'm getting more clarity of really what's going on.
Yeah, that's right. And it takes courage. Like that right there takes so much courage in a world that's so fast-paced, so technical. Like people want quick fixes. Systems are designed for like very immediate solutions and things measured down to a T, scales. Every strategic plan that I've seen never at the beginning of the year looks different at the end of the year, or the follow-up and follow-through on the strategic plan at the end of the year is interesting. And so when we're in a world that's so technical, and we're having complex conversations about equity. Like we're talking about leveling the playing field that was designed to not serve all people. That takes courage to say, we got to pause and recalibrate. Like we have to actually pause and think about how are we thinking about what is the problem that we're trying to solve? Because it can be you've taught me everything about like the air that we breathe, the water that we swim in is it's inherently not designed to serve all people. And so we have to be really conscious and so cognizant of holding a lens of like seeing things clearly. And I feel like when you think about courageous equity leadership, why does that take even more kind of intentionality or even more just thoughtfulness or mindfulness of the air that we're breathing?
Yeah, that's good. Because so much of this goes like you can go hundreds of years back, and so a lot of stuff we're seeing manifest now is the same water and the same air from hundreds of years of injustice and intentionality around the injustice in this country. So, but it's a lot more invisible now, and so which is why. Equity leadership, like leaders just have to continue to develop that lens and work on that muscle of a lens to really see what's not as visible, because the water we're swimming in and the air we're breathing could look like things have just, I wouldn't say gotten much better, but they're not as explicitly in your face as they have been historically. Now, different parts of the country, you see certain things. I live here in the Bay, a little different. Right now, I've been in some other places where it's just kind of like people like, no, you don't go over there, because you're not gonna get served, right? I was in, I'll say a town not to name one time when I was teaching, and folks were telling me, no, we don't really go over there in that town and go to the movie theater and eat lunch over there. And I was like, but it's 1995, this minute ago, but not too long ago. I'm like, what do you mean we can't go in that restaurant? They're like, it's not that, anything violent's gonna happen, but they may not put a menu in front of you or something like that. I'm like, dang, right? I was like, maybe I've been in the West Coast too long. So back to the equity leadership. So it's understanding how what we have now is so connected to things in the past. And here's about the courage and the inside work is that, and many of us who have social justice stances also, if we're not careful, we become agents to actually keep reproducing a lot of these same structures that we think we've designed with the best of intentions, But until you actually understand the experience and the outcome it's having with folks, and then again, listen and believe, because you can always say, but that wasn't my intent, but like the best practice says you should do this.
Right.
But best practice with oppressive tools may not get you transformative outcomes, right? And so some of the best practices aren't the ones that you need to copy from somewhere else. The best practices are right within that system, right within that community, right?
Right.
And so that goes back to your listening and getting in, and how, you know, a big piece of this is how to really be humble enough to say that people themselves should be and are the agents of change in their communities and designers. So we may have degrees and we may have this and that, and I might have been doing this work for 20 years and the organization has equity in it, but that don't mean I know anything more about issues of equity in West Oakland or East Oakland than anybody that's been living there their whole life.
Right.
I might know the name of a structure and a practice in a school or something like that, and these could be some tools and resources, but folks are just kind of like, oh, that's just a fancy name for this.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fancy name for that, and
Right.
somebody turned that into a nice PDF document and it looks fancy, and we got an author around that, but like, to tell us that like things have technical and relational components, like we know that, we just don't use that language.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
so partly that equity leadership is to say that I don't need to like, it's not about researching and knowing all this information. There are helpful tools and helpful things to study and have and bring,
Mm-hmm.
but it's actually trusting that people have a wealth of knowledge, information, and stories. I always say this sometimes is that like I've been doing equity work since I was about 5, meaning that as an African American kid, what I've been observing, like I have been diagnosing and seeing certain things, experiences, opportunity structures. I was in a gifted and I think it was called gifted and talented program or something like that in middle school, and I clearly saw the certain opportunities I had and some of my friends didn't have.
Right.
Like going to the symphony and like all this stuff in San Francisco, all these types of in quote unquote enrichment activities that other folks didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really have the language and didn't understand. But for me, I was just kind of like, that's cool. I ain't got to go to school. I could go, you know, sit up in Davies and listen to some boring whatever and stuff like that. But later on, when I had a deeper appreciation for ballet or classical music or other places we were going, I was like, I when I was 10, I remember sitting up in there and talking to people in the orchestra and all that kind of stuff. And so I had a scheme, I had all those experiences, but it's like, but I was clear other folks didn't.
Right.
And if I was hanging with people at lunchtime or something like that, and it was like, why went you to school yesterday? Well, I went, you know, over here. Why'd you get a chance? Why'd you get to do that? And I was like, because I'm in the gifted program. And it'd be like, what makes you like, you know, gifted to where you get to go on field trips and I don't, right? So again, knowing that people have rich experiences of understanding what, you know, and again, people, I think equity is kind of a term, maybe what, I don't know, 16, 17 years, 20 years now, because you talk to some of the old dogs that have been doing this work for a while, they'd be like, oh, well, in the 80s, we didn't call it equity. In the 90s, like when I was first teaching in the 90s, we really didn't, I didn't even see the term being buzzed around. We were talking about social justice. There was other names, but when you get underneath, it was a lot of the same stuff.
Right.
So like equity right now and how people are talking about equity ain't no different than how it's been over the last many decades and hundreds of years in this country. And so partly it is about, again, trying to make the invisible more visible.
Yes.
Getting the stories out from people and recognizing those kind of structures, those things that are having certain, that are almost like carryovers of stuff from a legacy of not trying to educate or not, if you take it out of the educational system and just say, let's just put it in an organizational, any kind of organization, most organizations are not set up for people to have a lot of input in the organization, the direction. Then you put race on there, you put gender on there. Oh my God, right? In terms of, right? So it doesn't really matter if I'm working in a school district or an organization that's granting money. When you see some of those senior leadership teams and how the males go down with the voice and all that kind of stuff, like there is nothing about like, well, that only happens in school districts or that only happens in, you know, Fortune 500 companies. No, being male impacts all systems. Your sexual orientation, your race, all those types of things. And so this is where you have to like be able to understand that. Right. And then when within those systems, seeing how it's playing out different, like how it plays out in the school might be how it, like how you see it kind of playing out a little bit. I mean, how you see it playing out might slightly look a little different, like in a classroom than in an organization. But when you kind of call it for what it is, it's the same types of outcomes or experiences around feeling not seen, not heard, not valued, no sense of belonging, or because you don't really have these credentials or have this, then you must not know something about something.
Right.
So again, partly it's around, when you're talking about issues and injustice and how people are experiencing stuff, what do you mean only some people get to weigh in on the conversation?
Right.
And only some people know what to do about it. So who's the ones at the whiteboard with the chart paper talking about the equity issues and what we should do about it?
Right.
You know, is it the people that quote unquote have just the positions and just the credentials, or is it everybody within that community that has a story, has an experience?
Right.
So
yeah,
it's a mouthful.
No, that was good. That was so good. I feel like there were a couple moments where I was like, oh, I got to come back to that. I know one thing that definitely I connected to is this idea that kids know, like you knew at 5 years old, 10 years old, kids are expert observers, and they're also, I think, experts, the original experts of integrity. Like they're the first to call out when someone's not walking their talk, right? Oh, hey, if you're with us live, let us know what your thoughts and reactions are. If y'all have any questions as we're here, let me know, because I can see there's a little 2 right there. 2 people are with us. What's up, y'all? Happy afternoon, Thursday. Yeah, so we're deep in a conversation about equity leadership and why it takes courage to call stuff out, why it takes courage to pause. And when I say call stuff out, I mean literally internally, starting with thyself, like really thinking about what is it that I see? What am I calling out first with myself? What am I noticing coming up for me? Why am I so triggered by this particular thing or what have you? And kids tell it like it is. You know, they tell you when you're not walking your talk. They tell you when you're like, wait a second, that's not fair. Actually, you said this mattered. You said we couldn't eat food, but you're eating an apple. What's up with that? You know, and that's the moment. I think you're such a powerful example of someone who has such sharp discernment, someone who really, in my opinion, this is all like what I've observed, you know, like to know when is the moment to be like, right, you're absolutely right. And I'm going to be authentic and real and put my apple down because it was just unconscious. It was a blind spot. I was hungry, and we're also used to like just doing business as usual. And there's this expectation that adults do things and kids do this other thing. And it's like, I really was so grateful for all the years that you were there supporting me and like reminding me integrity really matters to you. And these kids are they're sending you messages, whether they're saying it explicitly or they know how to give you feedback. They're trying to they're really trying to connect with you. So what would you say about like any tips or advice for people, or just like lessons learned that you've seen, like when you get so deep in the water, right? You're in this water that you swim in, and there's a culture of people just kind of doing business as usual, so much so that it's hard to see clearly, other than having an amazing coach to like remind you of what matters to you. What do you think like are some things people could do to interrupt some patterns and to like start, you know, I don't know. I created the SPARK acronym because it helps me remember all these different kind of like ways of being. But what would you say?
Yeah.
Or just any reactions.
No, it was resonate because I was, you know, it was like probably 1995. I remember when I had a soda can in the class at my desk, and the students couldn't eat or drink, you know, in the classroom. And I remember getting called out by one of my high school students, like, but you got your drink over there and stuff like that. And I went to a place of first command and control, a little bit like, I'm not gonna let all this turn into a big debate and blah 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 and stuff like. So at first was kind of pretty much I just got, I won't drink it today or whatever. But then I think maybe what I started doing was kind of sneaking it, whatever. But then, you know, right? Like I need a little caffeine or something like that. But then it was just kind of like I'm not walking my walk, right? And again, some of the students were bringing with a little flavor, right? As young people will, right? So flash forward. This is about the understanding, the listening and believing. And understanding, I think also how oppression impacts folks differently, because also there was ways in which, you know, classrooms and school, even when I was teaching, I was trying my best to have it a little bit more liberating, but they still are very undemocratic. Like I still control grades. They're like still grades and all that stuff is super still subjective and all that kind of stuff. So there's a way in which, and I even now being a dad of an 8th grader and of a 10th grader, and like hearing them talk, and they won't be using the word oppression, but as they actually talk about some of their experiences, it's like being oppressed. They're going through the motion, they're doing their thing, and they don't like just be calling it out, blurting it out to teachers and stuff like that. They probably like, as an educator, I might get in trouble, this, that, whatever. But if that wasn't an issue, they'd be calling it for what it is. And so when it does come up, and when the mud and all the slinging and what could appear to be like judgment that comes out from folks, not to personalize it.
Yeah.
Right. So what that really is a manifestation of all their frustration, of all the years, of all the stuff they're kind of going through, and then they see this thing happen that's just kind of not cool. You know, their fairness like trigger gets or whatever comes, and then they may take it out on you for a minute. So it's hard, and I'm not saying I'm the best at that, but this is where I, you know, if I'm holding a place of an empathy stance, if I'm listening and believing, then I can actually wade through a lit of the how it comes out, and focus on what they're saying.
Yeah.
And if what they're saying is right, I can say all day long about, but you shouldn't say it that way and this. Now with my young people, I used to come back around and say, I heard all this, but I wouldn't do this in the immediate conversation to say, and there's another way you can do it. But sometimes folks want to do that within giving, you know, I hear you. So I would say, I kind of hear you. And I take that. So I stopped drinking in my class, right? And then there was like students I had to loop back around with afterwards and then say like, here's why I think you were right. And here's the change I made. And this, whether you call it code switching or whatever, this is where I then later on, when they can hear it not in the middle of some emotion, to say, and also in the world, as you roll with folks and come out like this. Now, I heard that and I moved, whatever. Sometimes you may have to, you know, consider how you kind of give that feedback.
Right.
I'm not saying you know, you got to do it the way you got to do it, but this is how it impacted me when it came out with that. So I use that as some teachable moments. Yeah. That's with young people. Now, adults, I don't really do that. That with, although sometimes I've tried that, you know, with folks I've been really close with to say, and I got something out of that, but I just want you to think about if you're coming and stepping to people like that, I don't know if they're going to hear that, you know, stuff like that. But for me, I can still take responsibility for myself, which is the pause, what's within that. If it's coming out in a certain way that's manifesting with some distress and some judgment, and it's coming at me that way, and I feel like I'm taking all these hits, then I kind of normalize and say, cause they're angry, cause I represent or I triggered some. Now this, like particularly like right now, you know, just probably foreshadow a little bit of that learning edge for me, just like really having to be even more conscious and clear of being a male right now, especially given the social political context. And there's been a way in which I've been given some feedback or some things have kind of come to me in settings or institutes and stuff like that, where I've had to really be clear for myself that it is about me and what I did. And there is some things that I have probably been had blind spots around for many, many years. So someone might say, and you just now getting that, Mark? And they're right, even though I might have thought I was as conscious as I was. So all that to say, knowing where you're at, I don't want to call it like triggers, but partly it is around understanding the message behind why you're feeling the way you're kind of feeling, normalizing that. And at that time, it's probably hard to rationally try and understand what you're going through, but always loop back and come around back to that. What was problematic about that for you? Not about what they said, but why do you think you're reacting the way you're reacting right now? And what's that about? And then I can later on start to have even more deeper empathy for and respect for, even if somebody came at me, which I would say sometimes, you know, I'm freestyling here for a minute, but like I'm like, hey, came at me a little crazy, you know, not like in a crazy way, but like, you know, crazy, like bam, smack, like I used to do before I started having more grace, because I, you know, before I even was teaching, I was, you know, really doing social justice work. I was hitting the streets and, you know, got a rap sheet. I wasn't scaring nobody around because it was all civil disobedience hitting the street, but it was like I was in your face, you know, whether or not it was like police or city hall, the president's office at the university, or the state government. So I wasn't bringing no grace back then.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I'm like, I see how people have been coming at me a little bit like, maybe not like, let's shut down this institute, but someone said, I don't need you to explain something like that. And I'm like, wow, ooh, hit me like that on the break. And so I have to pause and say, I shouldn't even be saying hit me like that, but it's like, if someone's coming at me like that, or what's the message still in there? Now, I may be holding on to why you got to say it like that, but in there was something I said in my example that for somebody said, that's still not cool. Right. Because my intent might have been this, but the way I explain it, somebody saying, you shouldn't be trying to explain it like this when you talk about a gender issue as a man. So I'm just trying to give you some feeding back to you my experience. Yeah. So that's where a little bit of my learning edge is, as I'm hearing a little bit more of that, trying to be mindful of what's in the message in that, because I know I've inhaled stuff of just being male on the yard, at home, and stuff over years, and you got to exhale. Like I would say, like people talking about being a recovering this, that, whatever. I'm recovering patriarchy and like all that stuff as being male. Just can't help but have digested some of that stuff. Yeah. So when those messages, when the feedback or the things come in and the questions, I can't fall into guilt. I can't fall into shame. I have to understand and take responsibility. Right.
What you just modeled is emotional intelligence and consciousness of intersectionality in such a profound way. Like to me, it's about the reflection, the inner dialogue that is actually the leadership, in a lot of ways around like the fact that you went back and really reflected on that piece of feedback that you got, or even shared the example of like looping back with kids when they're trying to tell you something. I think you always, in my experience, you assume positive intent. You assume that people are doing the best that they can with the tools that they have, You also, it requires so much of us because those examples that you shared, like what it feels like to be on the other side, but you also know how much work makes progress in that operating without grace, and you alluded to grace, and you show up with grace, and we might as well just like National Equity Project has a definition of grace. What would you say your definition of grace is? Would it be the kind of aligned with how National Equity Project describes it?
Yeah, yes. And I think as distilled down, it's about being present with people as equal humans first. So no matter where I'm at with a person, like I don't know more than you, you don't know more than me. You're the best expert in your experience and all of what you know. I can't be better at who you are. You can't be better at who I am. So that just makes us both awesome, amazing, like brilliant folks. So I feel that, and I try to do it with my teaching too. I used to say to students, I got curriculum, I got stuff to kind of give you to play around with, but you know so much. You're going to interact with it. And your brilliance is going to be coming from just taking a few of these things and firing some stuff around that. Right. And so I feel when I get with people, I want to do kind of a little bit of the same thing, offering a few things because we do have the luxury of thinking about some stuff, cooking up some stuff and making some things nice and fancy. But I'm not teaching you this frame or this tool, whatever. I might have showed you what this tool, this frame is. But if it actually becomes this amazing thing to you and you're able to use it, it's not that tool. Right. Like all that stuff you did, you made the connections, you figured out how to use it, you kind of figured out the alternative version of that, whatever. So some would say, you taught me this and it's made a difference for me. It's like, no, you exposed me to this. Yeah. You introduced this to me, my learning and who I am. And so when I kind of, I guess, feel like when I'm showing up with people, I'm trying to come at that real reciprocal piece. And I've said this to you 4 different times too, like our coaching relation, I've brought kind of stuff to you, but it would not work if you weren't interacting with it and you weren't who you were. So you brought all kinds of amazing stuff to how we were looking at stuff. So it could have been a new thing, but I think people have schema for so much of the stuff that gets introduced around stuff. They may have just not called it that.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I like that thing, but like most people have so much schema for so much of the content, the information. Now, they may not have schema for a date of when some historical thing happened,
Right.
but if you pause from it with young people, and this again, how I was trying to teach, I taught social studies and literacy, but on the social studies, it was like, whether or not they knew that fact or not, when you put some fact out there and you give them a minute to really think about it, they have an example of what happened on the yard or what happened on the basketball team or what happened, whatever. They're like, oh, that was 1945, that was whatever. Oh, that's like blah, blah, blah. And it actually is like that. Yep. And that's the most important thing, right? That they not just memorize this fact, but they're like, this leads to that, right?
Yes.
And so I guess part of that grace is showing up with people like, it's not the half full, half empty, but people are like 90% full. You know what I mean? Of all this stuff, and it's just, or maybe this, I don't know, like maybe they're 10%, and it's around you're trying to 10% known to them, and you're trying to invite them with some tools and stuff for them to unlock that 90% within them that still needs to emerge, and et cetera and so on. So part of that grace is a belief of coming in with people and partnering with people in ways where if you fully are present for people, they'll do work. It's like a good mentor. Like mentors will, mentees that talk about mentors who had a profound impact on them. Oftentimes you hear like they knew me, they got me, they didn't judge me. I say stuff, I make mistakes, they still showed up. They may have offered some stuff, and if I didn't take it up, they didn't beat me up for not taking it.
Right.
But anything I did myself. Yeah. But that person stood with me. Yeah. They stood alongside of me. Sometimes I fell over. They might have pushed me up. But maybe that was a temporary scaffold, because right now I get up on my own now. Right. So they didn't show me how to get up. They may have held me up with some scaffolds at the right times a couple times, but the scaffolds are down. Yeah. And anything muscle and stuff that I got, like you can't build someone else's muscle up. I can't like force you to be fit and whatever, go to the gym, whatever. You gonna get on the treadmill. I might show you how it works and what things maybe to program. Yeah. But when you have a muscle and new muscles a year later, you can say thanks to Mark. Well, kinda. You had my back. He did it gracefully, but all that you did. But with the right ingredients and some support, which I feel in my role, my capacity, I'm trying to be that person that can partner with people in ways to bring out all the brilliance in them, offer new things to try on. Right. And if you could do that in a way of presence, listening, and grace, of like, we are equals, you can actually do this. Right. Like, I can't do this for you. And I believe you can do it. I know you can do it. You will do it. Right. That you don't need all my knowledge in order to do it. That's another way in which showing up with some grace is like, we'd be kidding ourselves if no matter what my role or my title is and how much work I've been doing around equity, as if I have answers and stuff. I have a couple things I'm trying to customize and have, knowing you, your context, maybe some ingredients that I might offer you that I know might be kind of good, but you're going to put the recipe together. Yeah, I can't tell you the recipe. You may not know it needed flour. Now I'm all over with some analogies and stuff. But there's a purpose of being able to come with, here's some flour, here's some eggs or whatever. Yeah. But it's like, I know you can bake that cake with stuff like that. You may just need a few things to get it started and stuff like that. Right. And when, I think when people are in relationships with people who are like that, and they feel like you didn't empower me, I empowered myself. You may have showed me some stuff. Now people will say they taught me this, and I heard you earlier talking about Mark has taught me a bunch of stuff. But on the real, I don't think I ain't taught you nothing, Rachel. I've offered you some stuff. I always would say afterwards, I'm like, take it or leave it, right? I'd say, here's this, that. Some of it would be like, let's see. There's a couple things that come to mind. Here's my response. Like, what if you tried this, whatever? And then what do you think? Yeah. And it would always be a take it or leave it. Yeah. And
most of the time I would take it. And then I'd be like, and the thing about it is resources, right? But coaching for equity, coaching leaders is such a skill because you're working with people who are at capacity. And then you're working and meeting them where they're at, giving them digestible things that they have the capacity to receive, and then supporting them to take it up. And I remember facilitative leadership, coaching leadership, all these are different like facilities that I had to learn for equity. I had training in like management and leadership, but like none of that was in the manual to coach and lead for equity, to really believe people's stories, to trust that there's no single solution, and to facilitate experiences that liberate and don't control and don't have too much order, that allow for just enough structure for people to tap into that and unleash and unlock all of their potential, right? And I remember like you'd send me a template or some tips, and then I'd send you back, okay, here's my draft agenda. What do you think? Like the questions matter, language matters. So this is the level of like preparation that I used to do on Sunday for the past meetings or whatever. I would be like, okay, here are my objectives. Here's what I'm trying to accomplish. So like it is, you did offer some stuff, but it is like, there's some real skills that I think like you did help me build. And so I don't want you to just like brush it out. You know, there's some
I taught a few things,
okay,
you know.
See? You did.
Maybe taught the you know, around, well, there'd be things that, but then I would say intentionality, but then like you knew that already, but now what may have been helpful is some examples of that, you know, or something like that. But you do everything with a level of intentionality. And even I'll speak for myself. Again, we all don't know what we don't know. So if there's some things I do know around, and so oftentimes if you send something back, I might come back with, okay, I'm holding a lens of what's the experience you're trying to create here, because you know, you might have an outcome, you're trying to get all these types of things, but I'm holding a lens that has a set of beliefs when doing equity work. Is that when doing equity work, you're always trying to get people to invest their way in authentically to where they're owning it and carrying it. And so whatever you're designing, and we have some methodology, some tools and resources around that, but it comes from a stance and a belief. So then that drives your prompts. And so how would you have them reflecting? How would you have them engaging each other? That increases the likelihood that they have agency and ownership of, and that they can, you know, have some critique of it. They can actually find the autonomy in there. There's also a level of, and here's some non-negotiable stuff, all the mix of all that in there. So, so in equity work, you do have, there are some knowns and things and some direction, maybe some compass moves, maybe not, again, the whole recipes, and there are some non-negotiable ingredients that need to show up. But partly it's about actually within that context and given what people are up to, if they're going to be the drivers of it, because part of our work as equity leaders is to, I think, support people to see themselves as equity leaders, or if they already see themselves as equity leaders, continue to support their learning growth and take it to whatever next level that they want. Because I feel that that's like, equity leaders is everybody I touch and everybody I partner with, and helping them see that. And oftentimes when we do work, especially some of our institutes where we actually have leadership in the title name, when we get folks who are teachers or folks that may not have a positional title in their name, there's a whole story that people tell themselves about not being a leader. And it's the same with people who like feel that they're not equity leaders because they're like, well, what's the equity language I should be using? So what is an equity leader, whatever, as if they're looking for a definition. Well, I'm like, tell me about some stuff you see that ain't cool, some experiences that you had that ain't cool, whatever. And they rattle off all this stuff. I'm like, that's a equity work. You ever take responsibility? You ever raise a question about that? That was leadership. Now, did you have a role or a title? No, I just raised my hand and said, something here doesn't seem right. Why are we doing this? This is having this impact. That's equity leadership. It doesn't take the positionality in your role to actually take responsibility for raising the question, for saying, what if we tried this, to convening some people and say, we need to listen a little bit more to this to figure out what's going on, whether or not, again, you're positioned to do that or not. But there's a way in which I think people, I don't know, it's just have internalized this notion of what leadership is. And have also internalized, or it's gotten in the way for people to think about themselves as leaders for equity. And I think that people who always walk around, including myself, talking about, I'm a warrior and I'm a leader for equity, and that I'm not a warrior leader equity just because I work here. right? It gives me at least, like if I walk into a place of space, like, oh, he works at the National Equity Project, so you must be an equity leader. No, equity leader will be the way in which I show up and present with folks.
Right.
And they will let me know if I'm a leader or not.
That's right.
And I'll know at the end of the day if it's about me or if it's about the people that I'm working with. The minute, and this is where the ego distant has to come in, to where this work can't be about me.
Right.
It's driven by my why and what I kind of want to see.
Right.
When it's all said and done, whoever I'm supporting in the community that I'm in, it's got to be theirs.
Yeah.
It's got to be theirs. And so my work is to continue to support folks for to again find the agency and to not be superimposing a vision for how I want them to take up the work. Right. Or what I think equity work should look like over there.
Right. And that's the inherent, like, tension that I think you're surfacing, and it's important, because when we change our relationship with tension and discomfort, it's like, cool, another thing to think about, But I think it is really important that I see everybody in this community as a leader, because you're here, you stepped up, and like taking responsibility for something, taking responsibility for what matters to you is the definition that we use here that Julianne Weisglass offers. But it's like, at the essence of it, it's like, if you call something out that's positioning some people further from opportunities than other, then that is equity work. That's equity leadership. And that's like, I think it is something that everybody in here has taken a stand around in some way, shape, or form. And it's something that I will constantly be working on getting sharper and more like, just refined. My tools, my skills, my capacity, what you were just describing is social intelligence, like being able to see after you're with people how they took something up. That's when you know if you're a leader or not. Like if people are leaned in and really engaged, then you spark some stuff. If there's a lot of disengagement and people aren't really hearing you, then there was some out of kind of synergy, something that happened there. And so as we turn a corner and kind of close out for the afternoon, in that spirit, what would you say, is there anything else you want to share about your learning edge that you're currently at? Like you mentioned gender dynamics and just kind of having a heightened consciousness around gender dynamics at play, and or anything else I haven't asked you that you want to share?
I'll riff just for a minute on the last piece around talking about taking responsibility for what matters to you. That I want to, and we use that quote quite a bit in our institute seminars and with folks. And I'm starting to also think about it slightly different. The spirit of it's still in there, but there is about what matters to me that also then puts it about me. And thinking about how to take responsibility for what matters in this moment. And then it pushes on, so what's required of me? What am I being asked to do in this moment? So like if I make a connection to again gender and quote unquote being a male and being an ally, then there's moments where I can take a platform to intentionally plan to say some things and do some stuff that may look like I'm an ally. But then there's times when I hear a joke from a friend or something like that just comes off. And so how do I take responsibility right there for what matters in that particular moment? Because it's easier when it's planned, when we're doing our equity work over here. But when it's in those like social interaction, it's in those micro moments that sometimes we don't take responsibility. This is where the courage comes in. And you have to then say, I got to still do the right thing. Which again, the right thing may be, and back to something I said an hour ago, it might be just pausing from it. I might not know what to say to shift the conversation. It's not the conversation where I might just be like, Mark, you said this, and can't you see how offensive that, whatever. I might not even have the words to figure out what I'm going to do to interrupt something. But if I actually am aware that something is not cool right now, and I'm doing nothing about it. So partly that responsibility, how do I broaden that to say, it might be like, I hear you, but some people might see that as a little offensive, or finding my own ways to actually do that, to still signal to myself and my own compass that I can't allow that. So you can't just turn it on with our formal work of equity work from whatever, which is why I love these games and stuff like this, because it crosses all boundaries in formal settings or hanging out. The conversation around any of this shouldn't be different, whether or not it's in a professional development or at the living room table with our neighbors, right? I'm starting to what matters to me, because sometimes in our roles, it could be around what matters to me around this discrete piece of work that I'm up to. But this discrete piece of work is still about the enterprise of humans feeling a sense of belonging, democratizing, liberating communities and stuff like that. So I guess the trap of sometimes being about me, there's assumption that I know what needs to be done and I'm taking responsibility for it, versus there's a whole bunch of stuff I might not know what needs to get done, but I know that ain't cool. So if I can start to be paying even more attention to kind of stuff like that, and more people are doing that versus trying to just keep hammering at what needs to get done, because I think this is the problem with schools, or I think this is the problem with organizations. Even though those problems may exist, we're missing a whole bunch of stuff. So I'll just leave it at that. I'm trying to be more clear about that not being about me, but what's required of me in this moment, or why didn't I say anything? Why did I freeze up? And freezing up is okay, and it happens. It's normal. But if I got to reflect on why I keep freezing in that situation, because if I can't interrupt it or ask the question, then I'm not walking the walk. I'm not. So that's my learning edge, and that's huge courage, because it's loved ones, it's families, it's contracts with people. If you look at work, it's on all levels. There's cost of it.
Absolutely. And I think, like, for me, something you said that it was months and months, it might be even years ago, that you said you can't crush people with your urgency. That was truth bomb. Mark Salinas, one of millions. But you can't crush people with your urgency. And you may feel like, a number of people in this group have asked me, what do I say when my family member does this? Or what, there's just so much offensive stuff. Do I step in? Sometimes I freeze up. So everything that you've said has come up in some capacity before, which is awesome. And I think, I'll just kind of bring it full circle to, no one can do this alone. You should never be in a space, I would hope, none of us are in spaces where we don't have someone to our left or right who we can at least say, I'm in relationship with you enough to where you know what I value. And so you're not going to assume that my silence is an indicator that I have no integrity. I have enough kind of internal reserve to know, to even just say, I have some coping mechanisms. I'm processing what was just said. I need to sit with it for a little while. I'd like to talk at another point, because I don't know what to say right now, but that just impacted me. Whatever the thing is that works for whoever, everyone has their different authentic way of doing it. But I think we can't do it without relationships and real authentic allies who really see us and know, okay, Rachel, she maybe didn't say that thing, but I know she has my back. Or we're in the same room when someone, if a woman if I would have been in the room when a woman said you mansplain, I'd be like, well, here's my perspective. As someone who knows and trusts you, here's my experience. That wasn't my experience. The role of allies is so subtle sometimes. And that's why I think we really need to be intentional in our relationships and really, just continue to show up for each other, because no one can do this alone. And I feel like there's just so much work to be done. So it's a blessing to have you in my circle. I'll say that.
Right back at you. Right? Yeah. And, I was excited to do, a little nervous. I could say the nervous word now. After the fact, because it's I could talk about stuff, but I think the work we, the partnership and the relationship we have that's emotional in a good way, but it's just emotional for me to talk about this work, because so much I've learned and grown through my partnerships with folks, in particular with you. And just so deeply moved by where you're at now and what you're doing. Just the fact that you turn on this screen and you're connecting your community just a couple minutes before this, as you've been updating me a little bit more what you've been doing, and just connecting with people who are looking for places to connect. Right? Yeah, you change the conversation, you change the future.
Mm.
And you know how to do that well. You did that in communities that I saw you formerly serve, but now you're on a mission right now. So stay sparked up, y'all. And, you know, these are tools and these are scaffolds, as you know, and they're brilliantly done and with level of intentionality. But then people get together, and that's where it happens.
Exactly.
And so it's both ends. It's the people, because you knew when you get people in, the good people, it's going to come out.
Right. Yeah.
It's like people, they're going to show up.
For sure.
And you gotta not like ones for like, what is the Inhumanity or the other version of some card games or something like this. But this speaks to who we are and gives people opportunity to do that, and there'll be healing. People listen to each other. Last quick story I'll say is I was with a group of leaders just recently that was part of a 6-series engagement of 50, 60 folks, and it was one of the participants clearly was vocal in one of the recent sessions about how this is kind of waste of time and I'm off away from my context and I could be doing other things. In front of 60 people, I heard that, we heard that, and I noticed that they, you know, how they weren't engaging even their colleagues when there was a lot of time to just engage with the colleagues. It wasn't like we were fire hosing folks with a lot of information. We gave some information and content, but we had them connected with each other. Okay. But I had to take a stance of like, wow, like I just got put on blast of like, this is a waste of my time. And when I come here, it needs to be amazing. You need to be amazing. I mean, it's like, right? I was like, wow, really?
That's some nerve.
It was. And I was like, and with my partner that I worked with, it was like, person's got like this some just the reminder around this is some stuff, there's a story there, whatever, and I really didn't know this person. So anyways, so I saw the person the other day. We're getting ready to start the session, and I said, you know what, I don't know this person. I kind of know their name. I think I know their name, but there's 60 folks in the room and we only together for like 2 hours. So I said, I'm just go up to them and like say hi. And I saw them over a weekend one time in a grocery store, but I think we didn't recognize. I went up and I just say, didn't I see you at such and such grocery store? And then the person smiled and said, was that you? And we struck up a conversation for 2 or 3 minutes. And I got a smile from this person. We were smiling. I was talking about my kids and bowling and different things like that. And for the rest of that hour, we had this like kind of smile, a little bit of contact and stuff like that. But it took me to initiate because I was holding the story about she hated this stuff. Now, the stuff probably still not meeting her needs. Right. But I was probably holding a little level of judgment. How dare you? And why don't you take this up? We're this and I'm this and all this kind of stuff. But I'm like, but someone's got to step up.
That's right.
And I was like, and I told my colleague, I'm going to go over and just kind of try and break bread. She could say, hey, this is still wasting my time. Or she's going to say, hey, I saw you at the grocery store too. And I had a belief that she was going to do that. And if she did something else, I would have came back with something else.
That's right.
But when it's moments like that to where when I see something I would have been holding that this person doesn't like these sessions, I got to do something about it versus trying to convince it. So she still may not like that, but like the human side of it, I went in. So it's in conversations that actually bring us closer. And I'm suspecting by the end of the year, she'll be even more specific about what's not working instead of just the saying it needs to be amazing. Be more specific. This is what I need, and probably what she needs we're not giving her. But then we're now having the conversation. But it starts with, can we be human first? Right. You shop, I eat. We both shop. We were at a grocery store. And then last thing I said, I'll see you maybe on Saturday at the grocery store. And she goes, maybe so, but I'm usually there in the morning. And I'm like, that interaction in 3 minutes, but I've been holding for months. So I'm like, is she gonna like put us on blast again? Right. And that's just like, it ain't worth that. It is not. It ain't worth that. And
anger takes so much more energy than curiosity, you know, and that's equity leadership right there. Taking the leap of faith, putting the olive branch out there, you know, like it takes so much courage after you've been burned a little bit, like, whoa, that didn't feel good. I just wrote about this exact experience when I hosted my first meetup group in Austin. Somebody came in like, there's no space in here. You clearly have never done a meetup before. Do you know what you're doing? And I was like, dang, I'm 15 minutes early. I'm setting up the posters. And there was a last minute, like impromptu, the venue I had reserved hosted like a tasting that filled up the house. And so I was like, do I let this person's energy impact my whole situation, or do I assume that he's got some thoughts and feelings about what I said, it's clear that you're an expert in meetups. Like, it's clear that you really want to give me some feedback. I'm going to go put down all of my 3 bags and my poster real quick, and I'll be right back. It's clear you're trying to give me some feedback. But like, rather than, I had to take some breaths and I had to like really get myself together because it was abrasive. It was feedback in my face, like the whole way it was good, everything, gender dynamics, etc. But I just thought, you know what? Anger, it takes so much more energy. I'm not about to let this person ruin this whole meetup for all these other 15 people who are here all excited. They were ready to go to the grass and sit in a, like, then nobody cared really, but it was that one, you know, negativity bias, as the research would suggest. But it's those little moves that really do change the conversation. And that's why, you know, this is just a spark. Everything that I offer and that I do, and anybody that I work with, it's just like, if I could be a part of a little something that makes your world brighter, feel better, then that's a beautiful gift. And so I can say with 100% of just my heart that you have been that for me. And so I want to give you a hug. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely.
Any final word? Ready to rock and roll?
Yeah.
All right.
Right on. I see you, Rachel Rosen. I see you.
Thank
Been
you.
fun hanging with y'all.
Thank y'all. And Team Replay, let us know. You know the deal. Hashtag Team Replay. Let us bring your questions, reactions, thoughts. We got a lot of comments about people who are going to watch the replay, so I can't wait to hear what y'all think. Take good care, and as always, keep leading large, keep shining your spark, and leading bright. So much love to y'all. Take care.